When people think of Image Comics, the same names always come up. Spawn, Invincible, Savage Dragon, maybe Witchblade if you're going a little deeper. It was a playground for experimentation, bizarre ideas, and ambitious creators who weren't afraid to throw something wild at the wall and to see if it stuck. The result was a wave of characters who, while not headlining today, left behind legacies worth revisiting. In the first part of this series, I dug into some of Image's forgotten heroes, and today we're back for part 2, because there are still plenty of characters who deserve more than a cameo or dusty back issue bin. These weren't just knockoffs or background filler, they were bold concepts, some flawed, some brilliant, and always interesting. Trencher, the unstoppable anti-hero of extreme 90s comics. Trencher is a truly unique entry in Image Comics' early catalog. Created by Keith Giffen in 1993, the original series ran for just 4 issues, the 5th teased but never published. Immediately giving the character a sense of lost potential makes him intriguing to modern readers. The story follows Gideon Trencher, a zombie-like anti-hero tasked with a bizarre, morally complex mission. He must repossess souls that have been wrongly reincarnated. This brings him into conflict with a variety of superpowered beings, from major heroes like Supreme and Shadowhawk to delightfully absurd minor characters such as the nasal python who manipulates his nose hairs as weapons. Trencher's main companion is Phoebe, a voice in his head who acts as his dispatcher, providing intelligence on his targets and sometimes serving as a moral counterpoint to his gruff personality. Trencher himself is a man of few words, often speaking through gritted teeth, and he has almost a deadpan, been there, done that mentality. He endures extreme injuries and destructive confrontations that would be fatal to anyone else. Thanks to his regenerative abilities, Trencher always comes back, battered but relentless. His superhuman strength, impressive marksmanship, and high-powered arsenal make him a formidable force, but the character is also very human in his frustration, exhaustion, and cynical view of his thankless job. Keith Giffen's artwork for Trencher is a perfect match for the series' tone. Exaggerated character designs and intense action scenes amplify the absurdity and dark humor of the story, while Giffen's line work often emphasizes the grotesque and satirical elements of the narrative, from the over-the-top battles with bizarre villains, to grotesque injuries that would be fatal in any other comic. The art keeps readers both engaged and slightly off balance, underscoring the chaotic world Trencher inhabits. Visual style also plays with pacing and panel layouts. Scenes can be simultaneously dense with detail and easy to follow, allowing the reader to catch subtle jokes and references in the background. This layered approach makes every page feel alive, reinforcing Trencher's relentless energy and the surreal logic of his missions. Trencher's personality is what really sets him apart. Despite being a near-immortal force of chaos, he has a grounded, blue-collar feel. He's not a brooding dark avenger, nor a flashy over-the-top powerhouse. He's the guy who hates his job, does it anyway, grumbling through absurd situations with dry humor. This makes him a perfect character for modern storytelling. Readers today could explore his moral code, his exhaustion with endless battles, and the weird humanity buried under his relentless, almost satirical mission. If brought back now, Trencher could thrive in multiple ways. Star in a limited series that mixes dark comedy with existential storytelling, appear in crossover events with other Image heroes like Savage Dragon, Spawn, or even Pitt, or even headline a streaming series that explores the absurd and chaotic underbelly of the Image universe. Modern creators could expand on his complex relationship with Phoebe, dive deeper into his personal code of ethics, or place him in the kind of bizarre, almost absurdist conflicts that made the original comics so memorable. In short, Trencher is more than a relic of 90s Image Comics. He's a character built for chaos, satire, and darkly comic adventures, with the kind of versatility that makes him ripe for revival and reinterpretation. The combination of Giffen's distinctive art and Trencher's grimly funny personality makes this a series that is still visually and narratively compelling today. SuperPatriot. America, guns, and maximum chaos. SuperPatriot, also known as John Quincy Armstrong, was created by Eric Larson in 1992 as a quintessentially patriotic hero with a long, complicated history. Originally a World War II soldier, Armstrong was captured by the Nazis and subjected to dangerous experiments that granted him superhuman abilities. He escaped, destroying the lab to prevent replication, and took up the mantle of SuperPatriot, wearing a costume inspired by the American flag. He fought alongside other wartime heroes in the Allies, including Supreme, Mighty Man, and Glory, tackling threats across Europe and Africa. By the 1990s, the Image universe had become far darker, and SuperPatriot faced brutal supervillains, including the Vicious Circle and the Sharkman Mako, who left him gravely injured. Left for dead, his body was rebuilt by cyberdata into a cybernetic form, giving him new abilities but also introducing periods of instability. During these times, he was manipulated into committing violent acts, at one point clashing with Savage Dragon while under external control. Eventually, he regained autonomy, rejoined the superhero community, and became a founding member of Freak Force, continuing to battle Chicago's supercriminals. His story also explores personal stakes. After learning he fathered twins with his ex-wife, SuperPatriot has to navigate complicated family dynamics while fighting crime. Later events in series like Mars Attacks the Image Universe and Savage World show him as a respected leader, mentoring younger heroes and joining forces with familiar allies to defend Earth from large-scale threats. SuperPatriot blends the classic all-American hero archetype with decades of experience in war, loss, and tragedy. He's disciplined, morally driven, and highly tactical, but his history gives him a pragmatic edge. He knows the world isn't black and white. Unlike some flashy heroes, he rarely acts out of impulse. Instead, he adapts and endures. He also carries the weight of being both a human and a cyborg, which introduces themes of identity, control, and resilience. When under external influence, he's capable of terrifying violence, yet these arcs emphasize his struggle to regain autonomy and moral clarity. His story also touches on loss, legacy, and family responsibility, particularly with his children. Before becoming a cyborg, SuperPatriot had the stamina, strength, and agility of 10 peak human athletes, along with slowed aging and limited flight through a special wartime drug. As a cyborg, his nanite-powered limbs obey his mental commands, and can transform into weapons he imagines, while retaining mass. He carries enhanced vision, night, microscopic, and telescopic. He can lift approximately 10 tons and seamlessly reload weapons using components stored within his body. These abilities make him an adaptable fighter, capable of taking on street-level foes and superhuman threats alike. Erik Larsen's art gave SuperPatriot a bold, iconic silhouette that contrasted the often chaotic and crowded Image panels of the 1990s. His costume was striking red, white, and blue motif, blending classic superhero imagery with a military aesthetic. In later appearances, cybernetic enhancements were illustrated with mechanical precision, emphasizing both his human vulnerability and augmented power. While he isn't as obscure as some forgotten Image heroes, he remains an underappreciated cornerstone of the universe. His long history, rich backstory, and morally complex arcs make him a compelling study in resilience and adaptation. Though he often appears only in guest roles and cameos, I think he deserves to be showcased more prominently. Given his depth and significance, he continues to appear occasionally in Image titles, serving sometimes as a mentor hero or symbol of enduring courage in a world that often punishes heroism. His story is one of survival, identity, and legacy, an enduring presence even for fans who haven't followed every Image crossover or series. Supreme, Image's Superman, reinvented and reborn. When you think of the early 90s Image wave, Supreme is one of those names that comes right up alongside Spawn and Savage Dragon, but not always with the same reverence. Created by Rob Liefeld in 1992, Supreme was in many ways Image's answer to Superman. A powerful figure in white spandex with raw strength to level mountain, a kind of grim demeanor that fit right into the extreme 90s aesthetic. But where Superman has always embodied hope, Supreme was written as cold, arrogant, and at times outright brutal. A superhero who could save the world while casually reminding you wasn't above snapping a neck if it seemed practical. For a lot of fans, he was a symbol of everything Image was getting criticized for in those early years. Bombastic designs, violent storytelling, and style over substance world building. And yet, despite that baggage, Supreme never disappeared. He lingered, waiting for a reinvention. That reinvention came in the mid-90s, when Alan Moore took over the character and did something nobody expected. He turned Supreme into a love letter to Superman, and the entire golden and silver age of comics. Gone was the edgelord posturing. In its place was metafictional playground, where Supreme had a supremacy, a limbo-like space where every past version of the character lived after each continuity reboot. Moore leaned into Supreme's Superman DNA, embracing his supporting cast, rogues gallery, and even the whimsy of old-school comic book storytelling, but filtered through a modern, self-aware lens. It wasn't just a rebrand, it was one of the most radical transformations of a character in comics history, taking what many had written off as a shallow clone and using him to explore the entire history of superhero fiction. Visually, the change was just as striking. Liefeld Supreme was a classic Liefeld creation. Hulking physique, glowing eyes, clenched fists, and splash pages that screamed power fantasy. Under Moore's run, with artists like Rick Veitch and Chris Sprouse, tone shifted into something cleaner, almost nostalgic. Supreme's world became brighter, more orderly, filled with designs that evoked Silver Age DC, without feeling like direct copies. The art didn't just support Moore's script, it recontextualized the character, making Supreme feel less like an image caricature and more like a sincere, if playful, exploration of what heroes mean across eras. Supreme has crossed paths with plenty of image heavy hitters, from appearances with Youngblood to cameos and crossover chaos. But his legacy isn't really about team-ups, it's about how he embodies two extremes of the 90s comic book world. On one side, he's the raw, cynical, bad-attitude Superman stand-in that made people dismiss Image as shallow. On the other hand, he's proof that even the most derided character could be reworked into something clever, insightful, and lasting when given the right creative team. And that's why Supreme deserves more than just to be remembered as life-filled Superman knockoff. He's both a cautionary tale and a success story, a reminder that comics can evolve, reinvent themselves, and even transform their weakest links into something unforgettable. For a character born out of imitation, Supreme became one of the most unique experiments in superhero storytelling. In an era where multiverse storytelling dominates both comics and film, Supreme feels like he works better than ever. His very existence, fractured across versions, constantly re-embooted and reimagined, is basically a blueprint for exploring the nature of continuity in comic book mythology. Imagine Supreme placed in a modern story, where he's confronted with not just past incarnations of himself, but reflections of every Superman analog that's ever existed across comics, film, and pop culture. He could serve as a commentary on the way superheroes have been commercialized, rebooted, and franchised into oblivion, while still functioning as a powerhouse action hero in his own right. In a sense, Supreme could be Image's answer to metaverse storytelling. In a sense, Supreme could be Image's answer to meta-multiverse storytelling. A place where you can get the bombast of Liefeld with the thoughtfulness of Moore, acknowledging that both are part of his DNA. Handled right, Supreme could thrive today, because he doesn't really have to compete with Superman. He can comment on Superman. He can embrace the tropes of the genre while poking at them, using his history of reinvention to explore how superheroes evolve alongside culture. Whether you play him straight as a cosmic powerhouse, or use him as a mirror to the superhero industry itself, Supreme is a character with untapped potential, waiting for another bold reinvention. Backlash, more than just Namor with whips. Backlash, aka Mark Clayton, was created by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi and first appeared in Stormwatch number 3 in 1993. Born in Atlantis over 3,000 years ago to a human mother and the Cherubim Lord, Lord Slytherin, Mark's early life was shaped by tragedy and survival, after his father sacrificed himself to imprison the alien Deron. Atlantis sank. Rescued and trained by Farian, his father's advisor, Mark spent centuries mastering combat and honing his skills, living as a ninja, medieval knight, and soldier across history. In World War II, he served as an intelligence operative with Team Zero, later joining Team 1 and Team 7, where exposure to the Gen Factor activated his latent alien powers. Through centuries of service and covert missions, Mark became a model of discipline, strategy, and combat mastery, all underpinned by his nearly immortal Cherubim heritage. Mark's career in the Wildstorm universe solidified when he joined Stormwatch as a field leader and instructor. Personal tragedy, losing teammates, and seeing his girlfriend, Diane LaSalle, put into a Demonite-induced coma, led him to go rogue, rescuing Diane with the help of Taboo and becoming a fugitive. Over time, he discovered he fathered twins, including Jodie, who would inherit his superhuman powers and the Backlash mantle. He later formed to the Team Wild Corps for the Department of Paranormal Science Investigations, surviving catastrophic missions and returning to active duty even after losing a leg. In modern stories, Mark operates as a PSI commander or alongside Team 7, while the 2017 Wildstorm reboot reimagined him part of Project Thunderbook, where his Cherubim DNA and a sentient implant called the Carer challenged his sanity, showing the stakes of his legacy. Backlash's powers are iconic. His Cherubim lineage grants him immortality, superhuman agility, and centuries of combat experience, while exposure to the Gen Factor produced psychic energy whips capable of cutting, shocking, and even grappling. His mistransformation allows rapid healing, phasing through objects and stealth. Even with limitations in modern portrayals, Mark remains a formidable hero, blending experience, strategy, and alien-enhanced abilities. These powers also make him uniquely adaptable for modern stories. The combination of psychic whips and mistransformation allows for visually dynamic action sequences, stealth-based espionage, and creative problem-solving. For example, writers could explore him infiltrating high-tech facilities, neutralizing rogue superhumans, or escaping catastrophic events by turning himself and allies into mist. Unlike heroes with fixed backstories, Mark Slayton carries centuries of experience, giving writers the ability to explore historical events through a superhuman lens. His mix of military, espionage, and mystical experience make him a natural bridge between street-level heroes, cosmic threats, and secret government operations, allowing him to interact with characters ranging from Team 7 operatives to new generations of Gen active mutants. From a narrative perspective, Mark's personal relationships, his complicated romance with Taboo, his role as father to Jodie, and his leadership of Wildcore offer fertile ground for character-driven stories about legacy, family, and responsibility. His daughter inheriting the Backlash mantle allows for generational storytelling. Where Mark could act as mentor, Backlash remains one of Wildstorm's most versatile and compelling heroes because he represents the evolution of a long-lived, morally complex hero whose experiences bridge centuries of history and superhero story. His role in Team 7, Stormwatch, and Wildcore connects him to multiple generations of Wildstorm, while his legacy continues through his daughter, showing that heroism and responsibility transcend eras. Pitt, the Savage Hybrid. Pitt was created in 1993 by Canadian artist Dale Kwan, who had risen from fame for his celebrated run on The Incredible Hulk at Marvel. Kwan's work on Hulk was known for its raw, muscular intensity, giving Bruce Banner's alter ego a terrifying, almost alien presence. When Dale joined Image Comics during its early wave of superstar artist defections, Pitt was his natural continuation of that aesthetic. Anti-hero who fused superhero storytelling with horror, sci-fi, and outright brutality. While many Image relaunches leaned heavily into glossy superhero tropes, Pitt immediately stood out. His design was monstrous, sharp teeth, glowing red eyes, massive claws, and an alien physiology that separated from the sea of capes and cowls flooding comic shops in the early 90s. In many ways, Pitt was Kwan's chance to explore the themes he touched on with Hulk. Inner monsters, genetic manipulation, and humanity's fear of its own darker instincts, without the restrictions of Marvel's editorial oversight. The series was published under Dale's own Fullbleed Studios in partnership with Image, a move that gave him complete control of his creation and ensured Pitt's stories were as unfiltered as the character himself. Pitt is an alien-human hybrid, the result of genetic experimentation by a warlike alien race known as the Creed. Engineered to be a living weapon, Pitt's immense strength, claws, and regenerative healing factor made him one of the most dangerous beings in the universe. But unlike his alien creators, Pitt retained a measure of humanity thanks to his human DNA, giving him a more complex morality than the mindless predator he was designed to be. This duality, monster versus man, is at the heart of his character. His early stories often placed him in the middle of violent clashes, where his sheer power made him both savior and threat. Pitt was usually drawn into conflict by forces outside his control, whether it was protecting children from alien hunters or clashing with human authorities who only saw a monster. A major through line in the series was connection to a young boy named Timmy, whose psychic visions revealed their shared destiny. This bond grounded Pitt's otherwise savage nature and gave readers a point of human connection to an otherwise alien narrative. The series mixed sci-fi horror with street-level grit, often leaning on themes of exploitation, survival, and what it means to control one's nature. Pitt wasn't a traditional hero like Spawn or Savage Dragon. He was more often portrayed as a chaotic force, violently lashing out at enemies but slowly finding a sense of purpose through interactions with humanity. His world expanded to include intergalactic politics, genetic experiments, and the Creed's ongoing attempt to reclaim or destroy him, making the series a sprawling mix of cosmic and earthbound storytelling. Pitt's brutal power naturally brought him into contact with Image's other icons. His most famous crossover was with the Max, where the two behemoths clashed in a destructive brawl, where in a twist they were both shrunken down versions of themselves. Their fight was less about making sense and more about sheer spectacle. Pitt's battles with alien hunters and Creed soldiers often spilled into these crossovers, dragging Image's more conventional heroes into his violent orbit. In one particular memorable storyline, Pitt went head-to-head with Creed forces on Earth, displaying his role not just as an outcast anti-hero, but as a reluctant defender of humanity against cosmic threats. Beyond direct battles, Pitt made smaller cameos and appearances that kept him woven into the fabric of Image's early continuity. These appearances highlighted his function within the Image landscape, not always a headliner, but an occasional presence that added danger and unpredictability to the universe. Pitt was never the polished hero meant for team recruitment. He was the unpredictable bruiser, the one you called when subtlety was no longer an option. While Pitt never achieved the mainstream longevity of Spawn or Savage Dragon, he represents one of the most ambitious and visually striking attempts of the 1990s to merge superhero action with sci-fi horror. A modern series could lean into this cosmic horror, framing the Creed as a terrifying alien empire and positioning Pitt as both their failed creation and their ultimate nemesis. Going deeper into his relationship with Timmy, his human half-brother, could provide emotional grounding, an anchor that keeps Pitt tethered to Earth while exploring questions of identity, family, and survival. Pitt would also work well in ensemble storytelling, especially alongside other Forgotten Image characters in an anthology or revival imprint. A Hulk Pitt series, or even a crossover with characters like Witchblade, Darkness, or Spawn would appeal to nostalgic fans while introducing him to new readers. Finally, his visual design remains tailor-made for modern media. In the age of streaming shows like Invincible, The Boys, Pitt's raw brutality and horror-infused action resonate strongly with an audience who wants superheroes that feel dangerous and untamed. In short, Pitt matters because he embodies the wild creativity of the Image boom, an era where artists were willing to push the limits of what superheroes could look like. Reviving him today would not just honor Dale Quan's vision, but also give modern comics a rare chance to bring a truly monstrous anti-hero back into the spotlight. Looking back at these characters, it's clear that Image Comics was always more than just Spawn's empire or a handful of breakout successes. The company thrived on risk-taking, on letting creators build their own worlds, even if not every idea found lasting mainstream traction. SuperPatriot, Supreme, Pitt, these are all characters who remind us that forgotten doesn't mean unworthy. They're pieces of a larger experiment that help redefine what independent comic could be in the 1990s and beyond. And while some of them are stuck in cameo limbo or buried in back issues, their potential is still there, waiting for the right creative team to bring them into a new era. This is part 2 of my look at Forgotten Image heroes, but I know there are still plenty more out there worth talking about. So maybe the real question is, which of these characters do you think deserves another shot? And especially, who should I cover next? I want to say thanks to anyone who has supported the channel in any way. We keep growing and it's really amazing. And I keep looking forward to more videos and what's to come. I do this because I truly love comics and I love talking about it with people. So if you like what I'm doing, why not subscribe and join our little group of comic ghouls. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.